Did you see the Australian man smash up a cafe in Da Nang recently? It was all over the headlines. That's the story just there. I'm pretty pissed off, and I want to call out every expat. And I'm going to be a bit critical of myself in the first instance. So let's look at the story. So in Da Nang, an Australian man from Perth, went into a cafe and was acting rather bizarrely, I suppose. I'm not going to go through the details. I'm sure that's been quoted. You can read the story to get more detail on what he did. But essentially, what had happened was this guy just went crazy and smashed up the cafe. Now, because of what has been popular in the newspapers and social media in recent weeks, everyone jumped on the bandwagon and said, lock the bastard up. He's a criminal, lock him up. And, at first I went, this guy's a goose and he should be treated like that. And then I sat back and did some investigation. This is what I found. So the poor fella has got a decent history of mental illness, not just depression and anxiety, but it was suggested that he has a history of schizophrenia. Now, I don't know the guy's personal situation. I don't know what he does. I don't know if he takes drugs or he drinks or whatever he does. But what I do know is that I actually was sitting at home because I'm still recuperating from my recent injury. And I was flicking through Facebook about 3 days before this incident occurred. And I saw a post in one of the Da Nang groups about a man who was claiming that, and I can't remember the facts, and I was able to go back and find it, but it was something like the Chinese mafia or spy agencies had broken into this man's house and attacked him. And there was a picture of him and he had a black eye and everything. And I kind of like went, that looks a bit weird. And I passed over it. But then after the incident occurred in the cafe, I went back and went, hang on a second, that's the same fella. And it was confirmed to me through my Facebook group, Aussies in Vietnam, and look it up if you're on Facebook, that someone told me on there that they knew this fella. And indeed, it was him that had been posting these ludicrous things about, pink elephants and Chinese spies and God knows what in the days leading up to the incident in Da Nang on the Saturday. So it was quite easy to conclude that this man had a psychiatric episode. And this is where I get really freaking angry. And you can give me your comment. I don't mind. Put your comment below. But this is what makes me really freaking angry. There is a distinct difference between a person acting out as a result of a psychotic episode and a person being a dickhead because they're a freaking dickhead because they go and take drugs and get drunk and then decide to carry on like a fool. They are as different as chalk and cheese, all right? In the first instance, a drug-taking, alcohol-fueled rage and episode is a matter of choice, You can choose to take the drugs. You can choose to drink the alcohol. And by that, if that's the reaction you have from those, then that is your damn fault. On the other side, there are these poor people in society, and I don't have schizophrenia, but I have had anxiety and PTSD, and I know what it's like to be in a situation where you can't control what is going on. Schizophrenia is not a disease of choice, okay? It is when all the chemicals and the structure of the brain are lined up in such a way that things are not working correctly. And indeed, for this poor fella to think that the Chinese spy agency has broken into his house to do something, and look, the fact is that this fellow, like me, was a nobody. He was just an Australian who had a job, who lived in Da Nang, and, he was no world champion at anything. He had no ties with any spy agencies. He was just a normal fella. And he believed that the Chinese Martians were coming to get him, and he was in a really bad state. So just like when you break your leg, you break your collarbone, as I have, you get cancer, it's just the same. When you're injured, or you're ill, schizophrenia sits in those positions. The only problem is that when you have schizophrenia, on the outside, you cannot see a external effect. It's not until the person starts acting out that you find yourself going, oh, there's something wrong with that person. Now, what I've been really, really angry with is the way the expat community in Vietnam have been going, lock him up and throw away the key. And come on, have some compassion, guys. We've got to be able to, we've got to know the difference between, gangland killings, drunken, bloody motorbike crashes, people getting drunk in a bar and having a fight, street fights in Bui Vin by bloody idiot drunks at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. All these things are done, and it's quite right that we are very fucking critical of these people because they are idiots. Whether they're Russians or Indians or Americans or Australians or English or European, whatever they are, when you come to Vietnam and you carry on like a dickhead, you are wrong and you should be locked up. But from time to time, things happen that are way outside the control of any choice. And what happened to that fella in Da Nang was well outside the bounds of choice. In fact, whilst it hasn't been qualified, there were words that he spoke allegedly in the throes of that incident, which indicated that he was crying out for help. How bad can life be? And I know personally, in Vietnam, there is a total lack of application to mental health triage and mental health emergency. If you are in an emergency mental health position in Vietnam, the system just doesn't have an avenue for that to be managed like they do in Australia. The system in Vietnam is very much based around family support. And if you're an expat, you're probably living in Vietnam by yourself, as many do, and it's a very isolating time. My conclusion from this situation was that for whatever reason, didn't take his medicine, maybe consumed some alcohol or something, whatever the reason was, right? He got himself into a position where he started tracking down. He started getting worse and worse and worse. And he tried to turn to someone, but he didn't know where to go. And he continued over a number of days to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And eventually he acted out on the Saturday night in the cafe. I really feel sad about that. I feel sad. I feel sad for him. And I just hope to God that his name never appears in the newspaper again. And what has happened to him, I don't know. But I really hope to God that he has flown back to Australia and he's able to get the correct treatment to get himself back on the straight and narrow. Without the infliction of that mental illness, life is very, very normal for these people. So don't think that he's forever a nutter. The right medication, the right situation, the right environment, and things can be very, very normal for these people. So, have a heart, guys. I really got a little bit angry with a lot of the expat community when I saw the offensive comments being made about this poor man. I don't know him. All right, I got no idea who he is. I don't know him from a bar of soap. I just did some research and I realised that, sometimes you've got to be a bit kind. And that's my story. As an expat, sometimes you've got to be a bit kind. All right, give me your opinion. I know you probably won't agree with it, but, we need to speak up and we need to be doing the right thing. As I've mentioned in previous videos, my motivation to come to Vietnam was just to make the place that little bit better. And that little bit better is all about my attitude and my energy. And if I can make it a little bit better in any way, then I've done my job. I hope this video for one person makes their life just that little bit better. All right, I'm Ray. I'm an Aussie in Vietnam, and I'm going to go and have a great day. I hope you do too. See you next time on An Aussie in Vietnam. Bye, guys.